Boop, 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 boop.
That was a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everybody, I'm back. It's been a while since I've had a show, but off my little hiatus, and we're back today to do oatmeal cream pies. I hope you're having a good Saturday. This recipe, there were multiple that I looked for online, and this was somebody who has a blog, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of them right now. But it's a very easy recipe, and it's a lot better than the ones that you would buy in the store that come in the long white box. I won't say the name. They're like something something name, you know. Anyway, no. Chris is shaking his head no.
I don't know.
But they're very good, and you can keep them in the fridge for a few days, take them out, get them to room temperature before you eat them. Desserts are always better room temperature unless you're eating ice cream.
Good common sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
But any kind of dessert really, and this is just a side note, if you're having like a chocolate dessert or pie, anything like that, it's always usually better room temperature. I guess it's also a matter of opinion, but in my opinion, many desserts are better room temperature. So, we'll get started. I have my oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees, and we have our ingredients all out and ready to go. You're going to notice I have our brown sugar that's got some plastic wrap on top, and that's only because I put all my ingredients together a little while ago and I didn't want my brown sugar to dry out. So, what we're going to be doing is adding our sugar. This is 3/4 of a cup. This was firmly packed like brown sugar. We're putting that in our bowl. This is a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And then we have 1 cup or 2 sticks of unsalted butter that's at room temperature. And we remember from my previous shows that I always do unsalted because it adjusts your salt in your recipe if you use salted butter. We're going to be using the paddle attachment, and with most recipes where you have a sugars and a butter, you're going to always cream them together. So that's what we're going to be doing first. Okay. I gotta go around the other way. It's stuck. We're having a technical difficulty.
That way.
Oh.
Have you baked it?
No, it's not. It's not in. See, there's a thing.
You hold.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. Something's wrong with the paddle. You see? It shouldn't be this difficult. I'm not sure why we are having this problem. It's very odd.
I'll take a look at it after the show.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay. So we're going to get started with this, mixing it on low just to kind of get things going. And then once we start to have everything incorporating, we'll increase our speed. So right now, I have this on speed number 4 of my KitchenAid, and you can see that everything is incorporating very well. And what we're looking for is for it to be fluffy, and so that you don't see chunks of butter. You want it to, like, you see that your brown sugar and your regular sugar and your butter, they all mix together until you start to develop a light, fluffy color. Not fluffy color, but a light color. And I'm going to turn my mixer off for a second. And I'm going to scrape down my bowl and my attachment. It's really important, and I've said this before, to scrape down your bowl, because if you don't, everything's not going to be incorporated and you may end up with chunks of part of your ingredients that you don't want. Like a hair. Ew. That was weird. It's a very weird day today. Thing doesn't work. Here. Okay. Okay, and so we see that I scraped down my bowl really good, and so I'm gonna lock it. I'm gonna get this back stirring. And so now I'm gonna be adding in my eggs, one at a time. And once you have it into your bowl, you'll see that it looks like it separates. And then we can increase our speed a little bit to get it mixed in really well. And we'll put it back down to put in our second egg. And go ahead and you can put in your 1 teaspoon of vanilla at this time. And I'm going to increase my speed. Get that incorporated a little bit. And I'm also going to stop and scrape down my bowl again. And sometimes when you get to this point, it almost looks like, well, not almost, but it kind of looks like your batter is separating. And that's all right. Because once you add your flour mixture, it will all come together. Mix them and just increase it just a little bit. Make sure that egg is really incorporated well. Okay, so then we'll come over to our dry ingredients. And in here we have 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. We have 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. We have ½ teaspoon of salt. And then we have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm just going to take my whisk and whisk all that together so it gets mixed together well. Okay. So I'm going to put this back on the low, and I'm going to use just my little bowl here to start to add my flour. I do this because if you start to just pour the bowl, it really goes all over the place. And you also just want to kind of have it in a smooth consistency going into your wet ingredients. Okay. And once that's added in, and you can see it's all come together really nicely. So our last ingredient for the cookie part is, this is 3 cups of quick cooking oats. You can also use old-fashioned oats. You'll see the difference. Quick cooking oats are very chopped up, and that's how they cook so much faster. If you're using the whole oats, your cookies will have a different texture because you'll have those big pieces of oats, and that's fine. And it should cook the same amount of time. It's just going to be a different consistency with your cookie. All right, and so we'll put this on low, and I'm just kind of adding in. And you can add this in relatively quickly. You just want to make sure it's all incorporated well. Okay. And that's our dough. I'm not sure why this is sticky. All right. So it looks like any kind of oatmeal cookie dough. Move some of this out of the way. And so what I'm going to be doing is scooping out onto our tray using, this is like a 1.5 tablespoon. It is a number 50. That's what the scoop is. And so whenever I scoop, I try to get as much as possible so it's a nice flat bottom. You don't want it to be all mounded on the top so they can stay consistent. And so we'll just keep them a little bit apart. And we're going to do 12 on the sheet pan. And now remember, because this is going to be a sandwich cookie, so if you're making 12 regular cookies, you're going to have 6 sandwich cookies. And I'm going to move these just a tad, just so they're a little bit more even. And they spread, but they don't spread too bad. So you don't need a ton of room in between. And I find when I get my top row and my side down, then it's easier to keep them all even.
How many does this make?
The whole batch?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because it says, the recipe does say that if we were, for the 1.5 ounce scoop or tablespoon,
That's okay.
yeah, I don't know. All right. So we're going to get these in the oven, because I want to do at least one tray right now so that we can show you how they come out. And you'll see also, I didn't remember to say that I have my pan lined with parchment, as always, so that it doesn't stick. You can also use a Silpat if you have one. I recommend getting parchment because it helps with cleanup and then they don't stick. So we're going to put these in the oven for at least 10 minutes. Okay, and I'm going to set this aside because I want to move on to the filling so that we can get that going. I'm going to have to rinse this. But Chris, if you want to come over, I can talk about in the background what we're going to need. So, for the buttercream, and this is a simple, just vanilla buttercream.
Why don't you talk about it? I'll wash it.
Okay. So we're going to be using, sorry. This here is 3/4 of a cup. So this is 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter, again at room temperature. Here we have, this is 1 tablespoon of milk. You could also use half and half if you had that on hand. And here we have our vanilla, and this is 1 teaspoon. And then here is our powdered sugar. And our powdered sugar today has been sifted. And so when I sifted it, I put my sifter on top of my bowl. And this is 2.5 cups. I keep moving the camera, sorry about that. 2.5 cups of our confectioner's sugar. So what we're going to be doing is bringing our ingredients over. He's just washing the paddle for me. You can see my kitchen in the background. And Chris, if you could take this and I'll grab the rest of those ingredients.
Nice clean paddle.
Nice clean paddle. All right. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with our butter. All right. So we want to start working the butter, and we're going to be beating this for quite a few minutes because we want to make sure that it gets really light and fluffy. And we don't want to have any lumps. Thanks, I have one here. And that's why it's really important to make sure that your butter is at room temperature when you're going to be making buttercream. You don't want to have chunks that you're going to have to work out. This way, you're able to whip up your butter so it gets nice and light and fluffy looking. Okay. So that's going to take a few minutes.
Can you overlook that?
Yeah, if it were to be too hard, I've had it sometimes where like the water that's in the butter ends up separating. But really, not necessarily. Now, if you were, let's say, making whipped cream, and you were whipping up heavy whipping cream, let's say, with a whip attachment, that can turn into butter. So that for sure you don't want to whip forever and walk away. Back in the bakery days, one of my coworkers did that. She turned it on, she put in like 4 cups of whipping cream, turned it up to 10, walked away, and then all of a sudden you started to hear this like thump, 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 and we went back over and it was butter. Good, but it's a waste of your whipping cream to make whipped cream. You can see as we're whipping this butter how light the color is getting, and that's really good. That's what we're looking for. And because whenever you're making buttercream, you want to make sure it's very smooth, because buttercream is usually something that you're going to decorate with. So you want to really make sure that it's whipped well. I'm going to be attempting something next weekend with some buttercream. I don't do cakes. And, well, I don't want to say too much because I'm going to be doing something as a surprise. So.
Surprise for who?
I can't say.
Oh. Well, if we're going to be doing it live, is it going to be much of a surprise?
I don't know if we'll do it live because there's some things I haven't done before and I don't want to come off looking stupid.
How could that be?
How could that be, right? So, you can see how the color has changed in this.
It's more white.
Yeah, it definitely has a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my mixer. And I'm going to scrape down so that I make sure that I have everything mixed in before I add, not mixed in, mixed well, excuse me, before I add the powdered sugar. And powdered sugar in itself is sifted, but it's important when you're making a buttercream any kind of frosting that you sifted again so that you don't end up with any lumps. Because again, buttercream is usually something that you're going to frost with, and you don't want to have any lumps in there. I'm going to give this a good little whip. So I'm turning this down to low. This is now I'm going to add in my powdered sugar. Sorry, I had to think for a second. So we're just adding this in sort of gradually. We don't want to overwhelm our butter. And we're going to add in our vanilla. And we're going to add in our milk.
Is that extra?
Yes, it's vanilla extract.
Imitation?
No, I'm not using imitation. Although I read an article recently that in the, and I'm going to scrape down my bowl really quick before I really get this beating again. I did recently read in the test kitchen, they did a, you know, because they test all sorts of different ingredients. Comparison, and they did a comparison between extract and imitation of vanilla. And they found that the imitation flavoring ended up tasting the same as the extract. I personally still just prefer to use the extract.
Because there is a product.
There's a difference in price for sure. Although I am now trying just to use the organic vanilla instead of getting the Madagascar. Because I recently watched something on the Madagascar vanilla, because that's the best in the world. However, the people who make it and everything they do, they don't get paid very well at all. And I just rather not support that. Okay. So we're going to get this mixing really well for a few minutes. And our timer went off on the cookies, so we're going to go over and look at the cookies.
Good timer.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So we're going to be just looking for golden brown. Now here we see they are still pretty light. So I'm going to just turn my tray around. You see they didn't spread too much. Put those back down. So that was 10 minutes. And I think I'm going to do 2. And that should be good. We're going to come back over and look at our buttercream. Turn this up just another. You see that it's looking pretty well. Looks like it has a nice smooth consistency. In a few minutes. Now if you felt, because remember we're going to be piping this, you can also use a spatula to put it in between the cookies. I prefer to do the piping. It gives it a smoother, consistent, like it looks smoother in between the two sandwiches, but you can do whatever you want. And I'm just watching this, and I kind of watch on the sides of the bowl to see if I see any types of chunks or anything, or if it looks nice and smooth. And to me it does. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And we see that it's a really good, looks smooth. And you'll notice I grabbed a different spatula to start mixing this together. And this may be something everyone knows or doesn't know, I don't know, but I did that because if we look at this one, this still has some remnants from it was first just the butter, and you may have some hard chunks in there. So you don't want to start to stir that with your old spatula that has chunks, and then you're going to be adding chunks into your smooth buttercream. So our timer went off. We're going to go back, look at our cookies. And again, remember our oven is at 350. Okay. So I see they're getting golden on the sides, but I still think they need just that's always like a dilemma. Yeah, let's do a minute. We don't want them really dark, but we also don't want them to be too undercooked in the middle. Sometimes you can undercook a cookie. Like I'll do that with my chocolate chip cookies or any kind of cookie like that, but you know, with this being a sandwich cookie, you don't want it to be all flimsy in the middle. Okay. So we have our buttercream, and our timer is going to go off in just a second. And we can try to clean up a little bit. I find that it's very helpful to try to keep your workstation as clean as possible. One thing they talk about a lot in school and that is keeping your area clean, because you can be more, once you're more organized while you're cooking or baking, things tend to come together better.
Easy for you to say.
Sometimes. Okay. So you see I have my cooling rack that's ready to go. And then I have just a pot holder I'm going to place my pan on top of. Alright. And I think these look good. You can see that we have a little golden color on top of the cookie and just a bit around the sides. And so I'm just going to leave them on the pan just about a minute or so. And then I'll put them on the cooling rack. And what we want to do then is make sure that our cookies are completely cooled before we put the filling in. Because this is buttercream, what would happen if we put the buttercream in between?
It would melt.
Yes. So we don't want to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll be back in just a little bit. I'm going to bake off the rest of the cookies from this. We're going to let them cool. It is 11:30. I bet around 12 o'clock we'll be back so that we can put these all together. No, maybe not 12 o'clock. Maybe 12:15 or so.
Okay.
Okay. See you in a bit.